So, Rick, when is your birthday?
June 30th.
June 30th.
Wow, he wanted two.
Two birthday nights.
Ain't no hurry on that. I'll be almost done with Greg.
Yeah.
I thought you already were.
You know, if you look at YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all these other things they have out there today, people are marketing themselves, trying to get viewers and using all different types of techniques, mostly for their own personal gain. Now, there's some out there, I'm sure, they're, trying to be helpful to others in many different ways. But a lot of it is just foolishness. It's done for self-gain, self-gratification, doing it totally for, the opportunity to get the money and things like that. And they'll do anything to get it. And there's no accountability. They can say one thing one day and say something else the next. And there's a new term going around for people that, that are on Instagram and YouTube and things like that. They're called influencers. Because they are influencing society. A lot of people are being influenced by the marketing and all the different statements and fashions that they put on these little short flicks that they show. And society's been influenced by that. Used to, society was influenced by the top 40 radio. You remember that back in the 60s? They had top 40 radio, and society was influenced by radio. The Beatles were one of the greatest influencers of this country that ever hit it. I mean, it changed the society. It changed men's hairstyle, changed the type of shoes they wore, the type of clothes they wore. And then the Monkees got put on TV, and that was a big influence on society. When it wasn't for the better. None of it was for the better. Not one bit of it. It was especially influential to young people. Music in our world is, you have to be careful. The words that are in these songs today, in all types, are dangerous words. As Christians, we are influencers. I think sometimes society has said that the best religion is the religion you keep to yourself. But that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says, in Matthew 5, verse 13 and 16, that we're supposed to be the salt and light of the earth. Light illuminates, salt influences whatever it comes in contact with. We are to influence society as Christians. We're not to do it necessarily in the flamboyant way that they do on TikTok and things like that. But we know that Paul turned the world upside down. He influenced the whole entire world with his preaching and teaching, changing people's lives. Romans 14:7 says that for none of us live to himself. No Christian lives to satisfy only himself or gratify himself alone. He dies to be with the Lord. He dies to leave a good memory and a good influence on the life that he lived. But as he lives for others and for their betterment. There's two ways that we have a great influence. Most of it is going to come in one-on-one situations, just everyday actions, everyday responsibility. There's two ways. Colossians 4, verse 5 and 6 says, we are to walk in wisdom toward those who are outside, redeeming the time. That is what we do. That is how we act with others in our daily lives that we come in contact with. Certainly, there are a lot of good studies and things like that that you can find on YouTube and that will help you. A lot of good Church of Christ messengers on there. And a person could do that. But those that we come in contact with and those that we work with, we need to work with them in an honest and steadfast way, showing them an example of Christianity. Just like the wife, as we talked about in the First Peter class on Sunday morning, how we, as the wife, is to have a great influence upon her husband without speaking a word. She's doing it with her actions, her love, and her commitment, and vice versa, husband towards the wife also. Paul goes on to say in Colossians, after he says that about walking in wisdom toward those that are outside, he says, let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, so you'll know how you ought to answer everyone that you speak to. So we have our actions, but we also have our speech. And our speech should be with grace. For what we say needs to be good to those that hear it. And so we can be a good influence upon them. Talking to them in a patient and kind way, loving way. So we need to be influential, but not as the world does on TikTok and things like that. Not in a flamboyant, self-gratifying way, seeking to satisfy others. Close with this poem. It's called Touching Others. The author is unknown. It says, the slightest breeze that ever blew, some slender grass has wavered. The smallest life I ever knew, some other life has flavored. We cannot live our lives alone, for other lives we touch, and we either strengthened by our own. They are either strengthened by our own or weakened just as much. So are we strengthening other people, or are we weakening other people?